The first time Edward saw her, she was balancing a slab of brick on her slender shoulder, her silver skin catching the low evening sun. He had been walking along the outskirts of the village, as he often did since Mary passed away, his old heart seeking solace in silence. For months he had walked without aim, his steps heavy with memory, but that evening he paused. There she was, an alien girl, no taller than his chest, her hair like glistening strands of night, her large eyes a swirl of blue and violet. She was building something, a house, though not like the cottages Edward had grown up around. Its foundation was marked in precise circles, every brick placed with almost ritualistic care. She worked alone, brick by brick, humming in a language he didn't understand, her voice both song and sorrow. Edward stood hidden behind a row of withered apple trees, clutching his walking stick. He should have turned away, should have left her to her mystery, but something in her movement held him. It was not just the strangeness of her alien form, but the familiarity of what she was doing. She was building a home, and Edward, who had lost his own to silence and grief, felt a pang deep in his chest. For days after, he returned, always at a distance, always watching. She would arrive at dawn and work until the stars blinked awake. She lifted heavy blocks without strain, yet placed them gently, as though the walls she built were alive. Edward noticed the way she sometimes stopped mid-task, pressing a hand against her stomach, eyes closed as though remembering something painful. She was young, though who could say with her kind? Young and yet burdened. He began to dream. Not the scattered dreams of an old man, but sharp visions. Of sitting at a table where she served warm bread, of hearing laughter echo in the small house once finished, of tiny feet, human, alien, or both, running across the floorboards. Dreams of family. It frightened him, the way his heart dared to feel again, but it also kept him alive. One morning, he gathered courage and approached. The alien girl noticed him instantly. She did not startle. Her eyes simply lifted, curious and calm. "You're building," Edward said, his voice cracking, brick by brick. Her head tilted slightly, as though parsing his words. Then, with a small smile, she nodded. She touched the half-built wall, pressing her palm against the cool stone. "Home," she said, her accent thick but clear. Edward's throat tightened. "Yes, home." That one word became their tether. He returned each day, and slowly they spoke more. Her name, he learned, was Lyra. She had traveled far, too far, her words often trailing into silence as if the memories were too heavy to carry. Her people had scattered, some gone forever. She needed a place of her own, a house, not just for shelter, but for belonging. Edward began to help. At first she refused, shaking her head with a soft laugh, as if to say an old widower had no business lifting bricks. But he insisted. His hands, though weathered, had known the feel of stone and mortar. He had helped his father build barns as a boy. Slowly, she let him. He would steady the bricks while she set them, mix the binding paste while she smoothed it with those delicate, shimmering fingers. Days turned into weeks. The skeleton of the house rose. Walls, windows, the arch of a doorway. Edward found himself talking again, truly talking, not just muttering to himself in his lonely kitchen. He told her of Mary, of the way she used to sing while hanging laundry, of their son who had left the city and never returned. Lyra listened, her luminous eyes wide with understanding. Sometimes she shared pieces of her own story, of a planet where skies burned green, of siblings lost to war, of carrying the dream of rebuilding wherever she landed. They became a pair, bound by grief yet driven by creation. And each night, when Edward walked back to his empty cottage, he would pause at the window before bed, imagining Lyra sitting across from him, her hair spilling over her shoulders as she laughed at something he'd said. The ache of loneliness dulled, replaced by a strange, glowing hope. One afternoon, as the last bricks of the outer wall were being set, Edward noticed Lyra falter. She leaned against the structure, breath shallow. He dropped his tools and rushed to her side. "You're ill," he said, his hand hovering near her arm. She shook her head, though her smile wavered. "Not ill, weaker. I must finish soon." The word sent a chill through him. He didn't ask what she meant, but he worked harder, determined to help her finish before whatever shadow loomed overtook her. Together, they built the roof, her alien tools humming as they fused beams in place. Edward climbed ladders with a strength he didn't know he still had, his muscles aching but his spirit alight. By the time the house stood whole, a small, perfect circle of walls crowned by a domed roof, Edward felt something close to joy. On the evening it was done, they sat on the threshold together. The sunset bathed the new home in firelight. Edward felt tears sting his eyes. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Lyra touched his hand, her cool fingers resting against his rough skin. "Family," she said softly. His chest swelled. He wanted to tell her how much she had saved him, how much he longed to fill this house with life. But before he could speak, she leaned her head against his shoulder. Her body trembled faintly, as though the effort of building had drained her beyond recovery. That night, Edward dreamed again, but differently. He dreamed of sitting inside the new house while a storm raged outside. Lyra was there, holding a child whose eyes shimmered with both human warmth and alien light. The three of them were together, safe, whole. When he woke, he knew he would not let her face whatever weakness plagued her alone. The following days, Edward stayed by her side constantly. Lyra confessed that her kind could not stay long on this planet. The air weakened them. But she had built this house as an anchor, a promise, that someday she or her kin could return and call it home. Edward listened, torn between fear of losing her and determination to fight for whatever time remained. He brought her food from his kitchen, bread, soup berries, and though she ate little, she smiled at his efforts. She showed him how the walls of the house absorbed warmth during the day and glowed faintly at night, a living shelter unlike any human dwelling. The villagers began to whisper. They had noticed Edward's absence from the tavern, had seen the strange structure rising on the edge of the fields. Some called it witchcraft, others a curse. But Edward ignored them. He had found something worth more than their approval: companionship, purpose, love. One evening, as autumn wind swept through the trees, Lyra placed both hands on Edward's face. Her eyes glistened with tears that shimmered like liquid crystal. "You gave me family," she said slowly, her voice trembling. "I dreamed of home. You made it real." Edward's throat tightened. He covered her hands with his own. "And you gave me life again." That night, under a sky heavy with stars, Lyra's strength finally faltered. She lay inside the new home, the walls glowing softly around her. Edward held her hand as her breath grew faint, whispering promises he didn't know if she could still hear, that he would keep the house safe, that he would wait, that she was not alone. When the first light of dawn spilled into the room, she was gone. Not dead. At least not as humans understood it. Her body shimmered, broke into motes of light, and drifted upward like fireflies. Edward wept, clutching the air where she had been, but a strange peace filled him too. The house remained, strong, warm, glowing with her essence. Edward moved into it, leaving behind his crumbling cottage. Each day he swept the floor, tended the garden she had planted, and spoke to her as if she still sat across from him. The villagers kept their distance, unnerved by the otherworldly glow, but Edward didn't mind. He was no longer truly alone. And at night, when dreams came, he saw her again, Lyra, smiling at him, their child between them, laughter echoing through the little house. Edward lived the rest of his years there, a widower no longer, but a man who had built, brick by brick, a family that defied worlds. The house still stands, they say, glowing softly under the stars. And sometimes, if you walk past on a quiet evening, you can hear the sound of two voices, one human, one not, singing a lullaby together, as though love had found a way to outlast even the boundaries of time and space.